My brother forgot to book me a room on our family trip, then said, "We're the real family." I left, and what happened next shocked everyone. Imagine planning for months, bracing yourself for the annual family circus, only to have your own brother, in a moment of pure, unadulterated malice, utterly humiliate you in front of everyone. This Thanksgiving, what was supposed to be a luxurious family reunion turned into a public spectacle, and for me, it was a brutal, yet strangely liberating, turning point. It was Thanksgiving morning, and as the New York City skyline outside my apartment window slowly brightened, that familiar knot of anxiety tightened in my chest. Another year, another family reunion. This time, the grand stage was the Westward, a ridiculously luxurious resort in Malibu, California. And, as always, every single penny of it was on my grandfather, Howard Carter. I remember doing a final check of my suitcase, exhaling a long, heavy breath. I looked at myself in the mirror. My name is Nathan Carter. I'm 35, a research director, earning a decent $130,000 a year, living alone in New York. I've built my life, my assets, through careful, intentional investments. For me, money is important, sure, but dignity? That's something far more precious. My mind went back to Grandpa Howard. He's this incredibly successful businessman, built his empire in real estate. Everything I know about money, about investing, about building a real foundation, it came from him. He taught me with such enthusiasm from childhood. He's the only one in our entire family who genuinely gets me. Then there's my brother, Jake. Picture this, a former airline pilot who pretty much retired to become a full-time husband. He and his wife, with their 7-year-old daughter Emily, live this seemingly glamorous life. But let's be real, none of it would exist without Grandpa's monthly payouts. High mortgage, car loans, Emily's private school tuition, all of it, paid for by Grandpa Howard. And yet, Jake's social media? It's a highlight reel of new designer watches, expensive dinners, lavish vacations. He's obsessed with painting a picture of a life that's completely, utterly fake. My parents, Richard and Susan Carter, they're cut from the same cloth. They're living this comfortable retirement life down in Florida, but again, scratch the surface and you find Grandpa's money. Their entire retirement fund, the deposit for their fancy high-end retirement home, all thanks to him. What really stings, though, is how they've always been. Cold toward me, always. But with Jake? Oh, they indulged his every whim. That hasn't changed since we were kids. I worked my tail off through college, scholarships for tuition, part-time jobs for living expenses. Meanwhile, Jake? He depended on them for everything, study abroad, living costs, you name it. The stark contrast? It's still smarts, honestly. Grandpa always said, become someone who can stand on their own feet. And I swear, I've lived by those words. I studied, I worked, desperately, to never be dependent on anyone. I built my career in pharmaceuticals, grew my assets, carved out a life that needs no one's support. This high-rise apartment, with its insane New York skyline views? I earned it. The quiet, comfortable luxury I enjoy? It's within my means. It's the life I chose. But even as I picked up my suitcase, that familiar Thanksgiving anxiety was growing. Every year, our family's twisted dynamics just seemed to get worse. Jake's shallow obsession with appearances, my parents' blatant favoritism, and Grandpa's worried, watchful eyes. In the taxi to the airport, I couldn't stop thinking about this trip. The Westward. A 5-star, internationally renowned hotel. Built in 1982, Italian Renaissance style, suites costing upwards of $900 a night. The Thanksgiving dinner? A special menu, over $300 a head. But behind all that glitter, the truth of our family felt so fragile, so distorted. My brother's high-rolling lifestyle, my parents' comfortable retirement, they were all castles built on the shifting sands of Grandpa's generosity. And I knew, deep down, this year, those distortions were finally going to snap. Everyone had to have seen it coming. Yet, no one dared to speak the ugly truth. The California sunlight streamed through the taxi window as we drove from LAX to the Westward. It was Thanksgiving Day, beautiful weather, a perfect, idyllic scene. I was the last to arrive, pulling my understated navy Rimowa suitcase as I stepped into that magnificent Italian Renaissance building. My simple, elegant theory suit was a little wrinkled from the long flight, but I didn't care. The lobby was a symphony of quiet luxury, crystal chandeliers sparkling above, footsteps a soft whisper on marble floors below. Other guests were already deep into their holiday afternoon. On my way to the reception desk, I spotted my parents. They were huddled in a corner of the lobby, talking intently. My mother, Susan, was sporting what looked like a brand new resort dress. My father, Richard, was dressed casually, age-appropriately. Our eyes met. Then, just as quickly, they darted away. "Mr. Carter, I apologize, but I don't seem to find your reservation." The desk clerk's tone was apologetic, her brow furrowed as she tapped her screen. "I have all of the reservations for your family, except..." Just then, I heard the distinctive clink-clink of high-priced heels. I turned. There was Jake, striding towards us, a triumphant, sickening grin plastered on his face. His wife, sporting an A*****S Birkin bag, was on his arm, and a Cartier watch gleamed on his wrist. "Oh, finally, Nathan showed up," he drawled, sarcasm practically dripping from every word. The receptionist kept checking. Other guests started glancing our way. "How queer. There's no reservation." Jake's voice rose, perfectly calculated to grab attention. His flashy Louis Vuitton luggage stood in stark contrast to my simple, dark case. He stepped closer, that smug smile still plastered on his face. "Actually," he announced, his voice echoing through the opulent lobby, heavy with malice, "I only made reservations for our family. A room for me, my wife, and my daughter. And one for Mom and Dad. You know, just for the real family." Silence. Absolute, deafening silence. The front desk staff stood aghast. My parents turned their backs even further, practically trying to meld into the wall. The air around me felt like it solidified. I took a slow, deep breath. My face, I'm sure, was completely expressionless. "I see," I said, my voice coming out cooler, calmer than I ever expected. "Then I'll leave." I re-gripped my suitcase handle, nodded politely to the front desk staff, and pulled out my phone to call a taxi. "Wait." Jake's voice rose again, but by then, I was already moving. I felt the sympathetic stares of the staff, but I just kept walking towards the door. My brother stood there, looking utterly shocked, but that triumphant grin just wouldn't leave his face. My parents? They just stood awkwardly. The only sound in that hushed lobby was the firm thud, thud, thud of my footsteps. Outside, the afternoon sunlight streamed through the main doors, dazzlingly bright. Palms swayed gently in the refreshing breeze, waiting for my taxi. In a matter of minutes, my Thanksgiving holiday at that luxury resort was over. But instead of sadness, a strange, powerful sense of liberation washed over me. Grandpa's words echoed in my mind again: be a person who can stand on their own feet. In that moment, I finally understood. Truly understood. As I waited for the taxi, I looked at the magnificent hotel exterior, an Adam-style building that hinted at over 200 years of history, now lavishly decorated for Thanksgiving. Luxury cars kept arriving, well-dressed families spilling out. Through the lobby glass, I could just make out my niece, Emily, all dressed up in a ridiculously expensive dress no child really needs. Fidgeting behind her dad, maybe looking for me. I remembered the small, pearl hair clip I had carefully packed in my suitcase for her. It hit me then, the elaborate gift-giving, the whole Thanksgiving ritual we'd performed religiously for years, it was all part of the facade. I got into the taxi, headed straight back to LAX. On my phone, I was already searching for the next flight to New York. Airfares on Thanksgiving are notoriously expensive, but honestly, I didn't care. The cost of that ticket was nothing compared to the emotional energy I wasted every single year in this season. In the rearview mirror, the westward building shrank, its gleaming form bathed in the afternoon sun, a monument to our family's superficial glamour. And now, the first, irreversible crack had appeared in that facade. I couldn't predict what would happen next, but one thing was crystal clear: there was no going back. The taxi was blissfully quiet, a serene bubble insulating me from the world outside. The cool air conditioning, the plush leather seats, they slowly, subtly, started to ease the tension that had been building inside me all day. Outside, the quintessential Malibu scenery drifted by, perfectly lined palm trees, gleaming white luxury homes, glimpses of the Pacific Ocean sparkling in the distance. Views that would usually captivate me now felt strangely distant, almost irrelevant. Without a moment's hesitation, I pulled out my smartphone and dialed my grandfather's number. The ringtone stretched on, longer than usual. Finally, he answered. "Nathan, what's wrong?" His voice, as always, was calm, composed. "I have something to report," I began, keeping my tone strictly factual. I laid out everything that had happened at the hotel. No emotion, just the cold, hard facts. How my reservation was missing, Jake's exact words, how I'd simply left. I could hear his breathing on the other side of the line, growing a little ragged, a little hoarse. He was stifling his anger, I knew it. But I didn't add a single word to provoke his sympathy. I just stated the truth. "I understand," Grandpa said, his voice low and heavy. "Leave the rest to me." In those few, powerful words, I heard an undeniable omen of what was about to unfold. And just like that, within minutes of hanging up with Grandpa, the calls started flooding in. First, Jake. Over 10 missed calls in 15 minutes. Then, a message, "Nathan, Emily wants to see you. She was looking forward to our annual Thanksgiving. Can't you think about a child's feelings?" Then, the switch, "My friends are coming over for dinner tonight." I was planning on posting the perfect family Thanksgiving to Instagram. Do you know how embarrassing it is to explain this situation? His voice rose higher, hysterical, in his voicemails. Between his frantic calls, emails from my parents started trickling in. We could have just booked another room, but then again, as Jake said, designed the house around the real family that was Mom, her email radiating years of chilling indifference. "You're independent now, aren't you? If you can afford it, why not just get another room with your salary? It shouldn't be a huge deal. What's the emotional high drama for?" My father's email was even sharper. "Jake has a family, a wife, and a child, you do know that, don't you? Can't you just keep quiet and bear with it over Thanksgiving? That's always been the problem with you, thinking about no one but yourself and never the family." My mother continued, painting me as the villain. "We had plans for social media postings. Such nice pictures of you and Emily. Now it's all ruined." With each message, a cold, familiar ache settled in my chest. But honestly, these were words I'd heard my entire life. My brother and I, always under this kind of blatant discrimination. As the taxi neared the airport, the barrage intensified. "Because you are selfish, Emily is crying, and she had longed to meet Uncle." He just kept using his daughter as a shield, right to the bitter end. All I saw behind it was pure vanity and pride. Then, another sarcastic email from my mother, "Poor Jake. If you knew how hard he tries to provide for Emily, you wouldn't be so heartless. Desperate as she is about Emily's future. You wouldn't understand, but children's education requires money." At this point, I felt no need to reply. If anything, I was grateful. Grateful that things had finally exploded into the open, without me having to lift a finger. Just before I reached the airport, an email from Grandpa landed in my inbox. "I am proud of your decision. I know everything." A sudden warmth welled up in my eyes as I read that. Not sadness, no. It was a quiet, resolute determination. A new chapter had just begun, and I knew it would unfold rapidly. My smartphone was still blowing up. Relentless incoming calls, increasingly worried messages from Jake screaming, "Answer the phone right now." Accusatory emails from my parents, "Your selfishness is tearing the family apart." But by now, I was in a place where none of their voices could reach me. As I got out of the taxi, walking towards the international terminal, booking my flight to New York, I felt this profound sense of freedom. This was it. I was finally free from the charade of the real family. About 30 minutes after boarding my New York-bound plane, Grandpa's next email came through. The recipients list? Every single family member. It started, in his characteristically dignified prose, "The following is my final decision, to be announced. Today, on Thanksgiving, an incident occurred which badly wounded our family dignity. The cruel treatment of Nathan, an injury to the name of the Carter family, shall under no circumstances be tolerated. I hereby freeze immediately all financial support given to Richard, Susan, and Jake. Let me remind you that your respective high lifestyles depend entirely on my support. Those who have been blinded by their lives of vanity and pretentiousness, who have forgotten what family is all about, deserve no more such privilege." The moment I finished reading, my phone exploded again. It was Jake. Constantly calling. His voicemails were pure, unadulterated desperation. "Nathan, please answer the phone. Convince Grandpa." It was clear, his entire illusion of a life was collapsing. His high-flying lifestyle? Built entirely on Grandpa's monthly checks. Without them, it was a guaranteed nightmare. Then came the emails from my parents. The conceitedness? Gone. Replaced by raw, panicked pleas. "Nathan, this is about our retirement. Can you please talk to your grandfather again? The $150,000 deposit for our luxury retirement home will be forfeited. Our medical insurance subsidies will stop." Their panic was palpable. The reality, there. Entire retirement security crumbling in an instant, had finally hit them. "Do something, Nathan. Listen, if it's you, won't he?" For the very first time, my mother's email contained words I never thought I'd hear from her. "I'm sorry for saying such terrible things earlier, but this is a family crisis." I quietly turned off my smartphone. Through the plane window, a vast sea of clouds stretched out. No perfect family Thanksgiving photos would be gracing Instagram this year. For Jake, that might actually be an even bigger blow than the financial ruin. The plane flew steadily towards New York, no turbulence. The guy next to me was lost in thought, scrolling through Thanksgiving dinner recipes on his phone. This was about the time I would have been in a hotel lounge bar, about to give Emily her pearl hair clip. Finally home, as soon as my phone connected to Wi-Fi, it exploded with notifications. Over 100 unread messages. Most were from Jake, their content growing increasingly frantic. "What am I supposed to do? I won't be able to pay the loans. What about Emily's school fees?" Emails from my parents had also turned urgent. "We might be deprived of getting back the retirement home deposit. What to do? Can't sleep over thinking about medical insurance." And then, the most potent message of all, a final notice from Grandpa, sent to every family member. "This is something that cannot be undone. Consider this the consequence of your own doing. If you disagree with my decision, I will cut everything off immediately." I quietly read through them all. Their condescending attitudes? Vanished. Only raw desperation remained. I had never seen each family member's true self as vividly as I did in that moment. I put my smartphone down and went to make some tea in the kitchen. By this time, I should have been having their sumptuous Thanksgiving dinner, that $300 a head special course. Remembering that amount actually brought a slight smile to my face. Every year, my brother's family would post about this delectable dinner on social media, yet in reality, they could barely pay their month-to-month credit card debt. My phone rang again. This time, Jake's wife. She sounded panicked, confused. Whispers about her husband's overspending, cracks starting to show in their marriage. Then, the truly desperate appeals from my parents. The retirement home won't refund the $130,000 advance payment. Medical insurance will be self-paid from next month. Because of you, our retirement. Even in their begging, they continued to side with Jake, continued to blame me. It was as though they had learned absolutely nothing. I opened the refrigerator, pulled out a lemon, and dropped it into my tea. Tomorrow, routine work awaited me. New research data analysis at the pharmaceutical company. My $190,000 annual salary, my progressively invested portfolio, a sound foundation of life built entirely through my own efforts. Out the window, New York's night view glimmered, the quiet lights of high-rise buildings like stars scattered across the city. My credit card statement flashed in my mind, paid in full, every month. Luxury I could afford, zero debt. Grandpa's saying echoed, vanity is for people. Savings are yours. In this city, my life was built by my own hard-earned fortune. Just as Grandpa always said, I had become a man who stands on his own 2 feet. And in that quiet moment, I knew with absolute certainty that this decision, my decision, had been correct. Incoming calls kept ringing from my smartphone, but they were voices I could no longer hear. Not anymore. 2 weeks flew by since Thanksgiving. Early December, and New York was clad in its first pristine white snow. Day after day, I plunged myself into new projects at the pharmaceutical lab. While my life's routine remained unchanged, my family's world had been completely upended. The first signs appeared on social media. Jake's Instagram, once updated almost daily, had gone completely dark. His last post was the day before Thanksgiving, a photo of an expensive bag at an upscale restaurant, tagged #DreamLifestyle, with the caption, "What a wonderful life." Now, it sounded painfully, gut-wrenchingly ironic. Emails from my father were finally contrite. I'm reflecting on our years of extravagant living. We spoiled Jake too much, and we were cold to you. I'm sorry. Similar messages came from my mother. With their medical insurance subsidies cut off, they were finally waking up to the brutal reality of healthcare costs. Our pension alone is nowhere near enough. I finally understand how luxuriously we were living. Jake's situation was even more dire. I got an unexpected call from his wife. I found hidden debts he kept secret. I'm in a state of shock looking at the credit card bills. We can't afford this life anymore. With Grandpa's support suddenly gone, their entire facade of affluence was crumbling around them. We're considering moving to a cheaper house, looking at public schools for Emily too. Jake cries every night. Her voice was thick with exhaustion and resignation. Even their marriage, it seemed, was teetering on the brink. In stark contrast, my life remained peacefully, predictably stable. I'd work from 9 to 7, and on weekends, I'd attend investment study groups, recheck my financial portfolio, and continue living well within my means. Just the day before, I'd been appointed team leader for a new research project, and my salary was set to increase again. My investments were humming along without a hitch. I didn't worry about the future. I had always believed that vanity brought only fleeting satisfaction, but true savings provided lifelong security. With Grandpa's words echoing about their insecure retirement, and Jake drowning in mounting debt, I simply continued to lead my ordinary, principled life. Over those 2 weeks, the desperate calls and emails had slowed to a trickle. Messages that had come daily were now only once or twice a week, their tone shifting from angry and in denial to quietly resigned. Jake's latest email was brief, but it spoke volumes. Emily will be transferring to public school. She'll take the school bus. I never thought it would come to this. It was the first indication he was starting to face reality. That carefully contrived picture of private school life, once so hopefully posted on social media, would never be uploaded again. My parents were also being forced to adapt. They were now seriously considering moving from their luxury Florida community to a far more affordable condominium. Medical bills were piling up, and the dream of a comfortable, effortless retirement had shattered overnight. An email from my father was unusually candid. We have lived with the wrong values for so many years. Yet, whether that realization would truly change them, deep down, was a different question altogether. One night, a short email from Grandpa arrived. It simply read, "Awakening to the truth of life sometimes brings pain, but it is necessary pain. Your decision gave them an important lesson." I didn't reply. I just saved the message. That night, as I stared at the New York City skyline, the stars twinkled between the skyscrapers. The city was still the same, always unflinching. And so was the life that I had so carefully, so intentionally designed. 3 months melted away since that Thanksgiving. The early whispers of spring were just starting to appear. Nothing in my life had changed. If anything, it had become even more rewarding. The pharmaceutical research project I was leading was thriving, and just last week, I got word of another promotion. My salary was now $190,000, and my investments continued their steady, reassuring climb. I remember standing at my office window, my gaze lost in the wide expanse of the Hudson River. The sun cast a golden glow, lending a soft newness to everything. The water shimmered. Fresh piles of research data awaited my urgent attention on my desk. These were exciting moments. Any hour spent amidst books and studies felt profoundly satisfying. Days later, a package arrived from Grandpa. Inside, a single-strand pearl necklace. The enclosed card held just one line, in his beautifully flowing script: "True brilliance dwells in those who stand on their own feet." I'd kept in minimal contact with my parents since the fallout. They had moved to a smaller home, still struggling with medical expenses, but they were slowly adjusting. For the first time, my mother's emails carried a different tone. Luxury brings momentary joy, but there is real security in living a grounded life. Jake and his family had also moved to a modest suburban neighborhood. Emily had adjusted remarkably well to public school and now caught the bus every morning. Jake's once relentlessly active social media accounts had grown silent. In one of his few messages to me, he wrote, "It all seems so vain now. Posting just to keep up appearances." His days were now filled with the hard reality of credit card payments. His marriage was still strained, but at least they weren't pretending to live a life they couldn't afford anymore. I had started setting new goals for myself, building an even stronger career in pharmaceutical research, and one day, leading my own team. I could envision mentoring young researchers, sharing the lessons I'd learned. My holidays were spent immersed in investment and economics study groups, surrounded by people who lived steady, no-nonsense lives. Our conversations were real, devoid of pretentiousness and vanity, truly refreshing. That Thanksgiving had taught each of us, in its own brutal way, profound lessons. The undeniable worth of financial freedom. The hollowness of image-based lifestyles. And, most importantly, the true essence of family. Grandpa's final words still echo in my head: "Real bonding is only possible after overcoming hardships." Inside my desk drawer, the pearl hair clip I had bought for Emily sat, still encased in its unopened packaging. It would be worth giving to her someday. When she's old enough to understand that pride comes from an independent soul. When she understands that a like on social media doesn't bring any real respect. Outside my window, a gentle spring wind stirred the trees, as if to announce, in whispering tones, the arrival of a new, truly earned season.